Good morning, everybody. This is Thursday, September 24th, and this is the OLM Dev Working Group. Today, we'll be covering a couple of topics on the agenda, including how to fix an operator and an operand for a single customer, rollbacks of operators, I assume, discussing how to model channels and where to submit additional tests. So the very first item on the agenda, how to fix an operator and an operand for a single customer, has an issue link. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll look at that together. All right, and Chris Johnson, it seems like you submitted this, so do you want to lead the conversation on this one?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right, yeah, Zoom likes to pick random microphones for me, so I never know what I'm talking to. Yeah, okay, so now we're getting to some interesting use cases, and we're having more and more customers starting to use, our operator-based products, our OLM-based products, and so we're trying to figure out the right strategy for delivering emergency patches, hot fixes to customers, in the middle of the night on a Saturday, diagnostic patches or whatever that wouldn't be normally part of the public catalog process. So so for operators specifically, there's kind of two main use cases. Well, how do you patch something that actually is a dependency problem or something like that, something that needs to be patched in the catalog before the operator is created? And then how do you patch something after the operator has been created? So this talks about, this RFE was basically asking, so we kind of figured out a way to do this ourselves. So once the operator is installed and the CSV is created, and of course the CSV installs the operator and so forth, and assuming you have all the operand configuration details within the CSV and all that, we can basically apply a patch to the CSV itself, and that'll ripple through and that gets persisted to the cluster. So number one, for that use case, I guess I would like to formalize how that should happen, because it seems like there can be optimizations in the future that would reconcile the CSV with the catalog and blow away those changes. So I kind of said this is how we think it could work. So I guess what I'm asking is this how it should work? And should we document that?
I see. So the modifying the CSV directly works for you today, but you're concerned that if we somehow make it so that maybe we make it so that OLM looks at the install plan and it checks resources on cluster, match it, and then it reverts everything.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so is this kosher? And if it is, then can we document this is the way you should do it? Or do we need a feature that actually has other knobs on this that'll makes this possible?
Yeah, good question. So who else is here is from the OLM team?
So so I brought this up to Sean, and Sean said, good point. I think this is implementation detail. And then Evan kind of came back down here and says, yeah, this should work the way you said it.
Yeah, you just want long-term assurance.
Yeah, exactly. I want a supported way of doing this.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And so, I might be kind of, I develop with OLM, or I develop OLM, and my understanding of these resources is that the install is really just the install plan is more of a ledger of like a transaction happened, like we installed a bunch of stuff that came from a catalog, and that's for the most part most of the work that OLM does. As soon as it's on cluster, OLM really just manages the CSV itself, and then changes to that are totally valid. And if we were ever to shy away from that, that would probably change expectations for a lot of people. So just writing a document seems like that might be sufficient, because if we were to change, that current implementation, we would have to update the document to reflect that, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So basically, it'd be kind of a best practice on how do you update a CSV in an emergency, basically updating an existing version that's already deployed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So update, create a doc detailing best practices for patching a CSV.
Perfect.
Okay. And I'll just, that's easy enough. I can just add Alex, sign me. Does everybody else on the OLM team agree with that? Like, I don't see any problems with this. Evan, I know you're here. Do you see anything popping out?
No, I think that makes sense. My personal opinion is that this workflow is a really important one to preserve, and that even if there are other options in the future for what we're talking about, where so the CSV can be kept up to date with something that came from a bundle and overwritten, even if that mechanism is in place, there should be a way to opt out of it so that you can do these patches yourself, I think.
Yep. Cool. Okay. So
Perfect. So yes, basically, yeah. I just want to make sure this is a behavior that we preserve. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So we'll get that doc out there, and then maybe we can bring this up on that feature planning meeting so that we have a, like, I'll just add that to this item to that agenda. So
Yeah, that'd be
sure that
great.
it's actually assigned.
Might be nice to have an end-to-end test actually that, or maybe just a unit test or something that validates that it's always possible to patch a CSV, and that way we won't forget in a year or 2 years or something that this is really important.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think we technically do have tests that mirror some of those assurances. I know we have some webhook tests that make sure that if you change the value of if you change value in the webhook defined in the CSV, it's actually updated in accordingly, but like it's not a long-lived test, so I don't know, like if a new subscription came in, if it would override that, obviously, but we can totally look into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think we addressed that one, so we can move on to
So
the
yeah,
next one.
well, so related to that then, okay, so that's patching an installed CSV. We've run into other problems too, where we need to patch the catalog, right? So the CSV of like a dependent operator that gets automatically installed with another one, it's like there's a dependency that was broken or something like that, or we've got something else in that gets, we need to fix in a temporary catalog. So what we need to do is install an overlay catalog on the customer's cluster. So the way that we're going to tackle that is by using the new prune and RM capabilities to prune the public catalogs and give the customer kind of an overridden version of that with our replaced, maybe single version of an operator or a bundle in it, right? So if we do that, so it's pretty straightforward in how to do it. It's not real pretty for the customer because we have to update the catalog source, potentially overlaying the ones that get installed by default by other providers. What I would like to know, so first of all, I want to make sure that people understand that we're doing that and any red flags with that. Secondly, a problem that there is that there's this duplication problem. So if you have two catalogs installed, two catalog sources installed that have the exact same set of operators in them, but they're slightly different because somebody's been batching them, what is the weighting? Sorry, there was an echo. It might have been my fault. So like if we installed a patch version that just had an updated operator CSV to overlay the same version, what is there a way that we can make that one override another catalog source?
Yes, there is, and I just put a doc or a link to a doc in the chat that goes over some of the details. But there are catalog weighting rules, and for the most part, they're fairly straightforward. It's there's a priority field on the catalog, and any dependencies are preferred from catalogs with a higher weight. The only exception to that is if there is an option that can satisfy a dependency that's in the same catalog, as the thing that's requiring it, that will always be preferred. And so it is possible that you still might need to do some rebuilding some fancy catalogs using some of your prune stuff if you need to modify a catalog that has a bunch of options in it and overwrite that for a user. But for the most part, being able to set the priority of the catalog gives you a lot of control.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me think that, so when we came out with our so we have an IBM catalog. So we have one catalog index image that has all of our products in it. There are a couple outliers that aren't part of that yet, but we're trying to get everybody in that one monster catalog. Then I'm wondering if it makes sense to split it up into multiple catalog index images, since they're all merged into one experience anyway, from a subscription perspective. I mean, I guess not from a subscription perspective, but they're from a user interface perspective anyway. Do you have any comment on that? Whether it's, having, because I know obviously OpenShift with the marketplace has one monster catalog. And so we couldn't override it with the weight that way. IBM has its own monster catalog, so that also precludes us the ability to do that. I guess, have you thought about the cardinality and the granularity, I guess, of the catalogs and how they should normally be done?
I definitely think of catalogs as like the unit of a provider. So to me, Red Hat ships OpenShift with 4 catalogs, but they're all essentially coming from Red Hat. So to me, it makes more sense to have one catalog. It's pretty much up to you how you want to do it. If you want to split things up more, that's fine. It does introduce, I think it potentially introduces options for user confusion. For the most part, I don't think that end users need to care about catalog priority. So if you were doing something where you had the same operator in multiple catalogs, but they had different priorities, then a user might get confused. Another thing, the default catalogs that ship with OLM, they all have negative priorities, which means that by default, when any user creates a catalog, their content has priority over anything else that comes by default. So if you start shipping catalogs to users that have higher priorities than that, they'll start making catalogs on their own. And then the only way to resolve like why their content's not preferred is to dig into some of the details of how catalogs get prioritized.
All right, let me read through this. This is new doc for me. I haven't seen this one yet.
It's hot off the presses.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's good enough for now. I got to noodle on it some more.
Cool. And as always, you can just reach out to us on the OLM Dev Kubernetes channel on Slack. And so our next item is the rollback issue with operators. And this one, I know that our team has put a lot of thought and have had a lot of conversations about. It might be good just to hear what your customers are saying, Chris, so that we have more scope, and then we can kind of visit some of the pain points on this subject.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, as we all become good at writing operators, right? We're not good now, right? We're all learning about this, and we're all things are maturing very, slowly in parts and fast in other parts. So the big thing is, a lot of our products now are operator heavy, and we are depending on all of the dependency management bits, right? So right now we're using GVK. In 4.6, we're going to try to start using the new Semver range support. So there's use cases where customers would like to do an upgrade, and then if the upgrade fails for whatever reason, roll it back to whatever it had before, rather than having to be completely stuck and they'll have to call support, which would have to roll out a hot fix that we talked about before, which will take a lot of time. Or they would have to uninstall the operator and reinstall everything one by one with whatever the version they had before, if they even know, they'd have to go do some digging to figure out what the working version they had before was, which might result in data loss, depending on how it's uninstalled and reinstalled. So it's really not about, downgrading to any version. It's really downgrading to the previous version that was just installed.
Okay, cool. I was just updating the notes. Evan, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to share how I feel about it?
Please go ahead. I was actually going to suggest, I know Vu has helped some folks with some similar problems. I didn't know if you had some thoughts.
Yeah, cool. So Vu, do you want to have the shot to go, or? I mean, I'll just kick it off. So, yeah, we recognize that this is a big pain point, and a lot of the people that have used OLM and work in like SRE type roles where they're managing customers using their operators and such have complained that this is a vital feature, and we absolutely acknowledge that it would significantly improve the experience of OLM's users if they had this ability. Right now, we're a little hesitant to implement it because it's fairly difficult to implement, because if an operator can fail to install in many ways, and many changes can happen with an upgrade. So like in the simplest case that I can think of is that you have a single operator installed and you upgrade it, and it, one of the first things we have to do is apply the updated CRD before the operator can kick off. The CRD is upgraded, and if it works forward, there's some logic that Vu had actually written that would assess whether or not it's going to work and move it forward. So assuming that logic passed and the CRD was upgraded, the operator could, run for a very short period of time, or it could run for a very long period of time. And the longer that the operator is running, the more, the higher the likelihood that the CRs that are on cluster have been converted to the new version, because most people haven't written conversion webhooks yet, and it doesn't handle all cases as far as I know at this point, in terms of like if you deprecate fields entirely that aren't in the new version. So there's a lot of thought and effort that needs to go into this, just for the simplest case, where if we roll it forward, can we go back properly without breaking things, or while guaranteeing that, even if we do reapply the old CRD, the old deployments, RBAC, and everything else, is everything still in the state that it was at prior to the upgrade occurring? So like the solution that we have to do for this, it does not seem like it's going to be trivial, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of logic and support that we're going to have to make available for each individual operator to kind of define how.
What about, so from a simple use case, what about just, supporting the happy path where you've just done a Z build update and there are no CRD updates or anything like that. It was simply a security patch that blew up.
Yeah, and that's like a case we could probably, that would be like a happy case that we would probably be able to address in the near future, as long as we could get it on our plate to do. And maybe we can do that via the new meeting that we're organizing, where we try and discuss future development.
So do you already have something in the backlog that talks about that? Or do you want me to write up like an RFE issue like I did for the CSV or the CSV hotfix thing?
That's a good question. Evan, do we have any existing public facing documents on this issue?
I think we'll have to check the GitHub issues and enhancements for something public. I'm pretty sure there is an RFE for this in the RFE JIRA, and I know that the RFE JIRA is supposed to be going public any day now. So hopefully there's something we can link to. I'll go see if I can dig it up.
Yeah, if nothing else, add the link here, even if I can't see it. At least we'll know there's one there.
I am a little interested your thoughts on the support here, because when we've like Alex said, this is something we've definitely thought about and talked about, but it makes a lot of sense to me for a team or a customer who is building an operator and shipping it themselves, because they know exactly what it's doing and they know when a rollback should be safe or not. But for someone who's consuming someone else's operator that they're providing to them, it's not obvious to me how they would ever know whether or not a rollback is safe. And then if they choose to do a rollback at a time that it's not safe, their cluster is potentially in a really terrible spot that would be very hard to support.
Well, I think that's a decision that the operator provider would need to know, right? So you'd have to really ask it, hey, can you go backwards to this version? Do you support rollback, I guess, to this version? And they'd have to give you a vote.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Sort of do a downgrade graph like we do an update graph.
Right, exactly. Yep. It's almost you'd want to create another generation, or like the previous generation. Hey, are you going to support this? And yes or no.
We could
Could be an
even
opt-in, I
use
guess.
the communication channel thing that we're working on, but that might be weird to include in code.
I mean, it could be too, maybe some of the operators are super simple and they're always simple and they could always do it. So you could have something even in the CSV that says, hey, I support, instead of, replace, maybe I support replaces of this version or something like that. Or I support downgrade to a Z or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just a little nervous about how often an author might think they're rollbackable and then they're not, and then the catalog's already out there, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's yeah, but
I appreciate the problem, right? And I know why it's not solved yet, right? So I just wanted to make sure that you guys have already talked about it, which you guys obviously have. And I think we should continue bringing it forward, because I think there's going to be way more opportunity for customers to get into trouble. And this hotfix approach that we're looking at, that's going to get abused like crazy, and it scares the crap out of me.
well, I'm gonna add this to the agenda notes for our Thursday meeting where we actually, pave the path forward, right, for like feature work and stuff, if that's appropriate. Okay, and then Evan will get the Jira link updated and added to the agenda and notes doc.
All right, I just put it in the chat. Chris, I don't want to give you too many tasks, but if you do have a second, I think it would be useful to have your perspective on an explicit downgrade graph. That to me sounds like a really interesting approach to the problem that I do think needs some user backing to start working on. Because on the surface it's rather complicated, but if you have good use cases for wanting to be able to mark specific downgrade paths, that makes a lot of sense and would help us set aside time to work on it.
Yeah, I see. Unfortunately, I can't see that issue.
Well, I'm pretty sure it will be public at some point, but I guess, yeah, just a quick GitHub issue or something, just so we don't forget, would be great. And if you don't have time, I can write something up really quickly, send it to you for review.
Yeah, I'm not going to have time before tomorrow, I don't think so. But that's a good idea though. Yeah.
Okay, and so we'll capture that. Are we okay to move on?
I'm good.
Cool. And so Chris also submitted channel taxonomy, so we can discuss that next.
Yeah, so the idea is that now that OpenShift is coming out with a EUS, the Extended Update Service Release, we want to put out some of our own, we call them long-term service releases, LTSs. So that gives us the opportunity to extend the support lifecycle of certain major minor releases of our products. So we're trying to figure out the right way, so a way of giving customers the freedom to adopt an LTS release and stay within the confines of that release, or be obvious when they've breached those confines. So, there's all sorts of different ways we could do this. We could just say, hey, the entire cluster is LTS, and we're going to give you a special catalog that only has those things in it. Another thing we could do is we could say, oh, we're going to create different operator package names that have LTS in the name, and you better install only those. But again, that's another problem, especially if they share the same API. Would we have different APIs? So then the other option is if we had these mixed catalogs that had a combination of continuous delivery versions and non-continuous or LTS versions, could we use a carve out a major minor release? So like, for example, here I've got like 2 operators in a catalog. I carved out for operator A. I said 1.1.x are always going to be LTS operators. So that stream is only going to ever get Z builds, right? And likewise, operator B, its version 4.1 is considered the LTS release. So for us to resolve the correct dependency graph when they're installed, we could use the new semver package or semver range references to limit to the scope of operator A rather than using the GVK lookup. This allows us to move, to stay within the confines. It also lets customers move up to LTS, right, from 1.0, and then they can move out of LTS in 1.2 if they wanted to. Likewise, we could build catalogs that omitted, the non-LTS releases from it also. So I was just wondering, so as I was testing this out, I found a whole bunch of problems. So I have a link to the issue in my bullet down there. So I'm finding problems where it tries to downgrade things. I'm finding problems where, I think there's some edge cases that just need some more testing around. And I think some people are looking at them. But I just wanted to kind of vet that out. Is this a use case that you've foreseen in adopting LTS-oriented versions? Is this a way that you envision doing that? Or did you have another envision for this? Don't all speak at once.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not too, I typically don't focus too much on the catalog work, so maybe Evan can save me.
Yeah, sure. I think I missed a bit of your explanation of what you're suggesting, Chris, so I apologize. But yeah, the idea behind a lot of the new resolver features is to be able to support things like that. One of the things we thought would be really useful is if you could label operators with a particular support statement. So there's the new label type of property and dependency. And so you could indicate, here's my big graph, but then a subset of them are LTS. And if you want to, you can restrict, and this is the part that's not there yet, but a user could restrict the dependency resolution to only look at things with the LTS label, for example.
Yeah, so I know that there is labeling capability there, but unfortunately the labels are, the grouping piece isn't there yet. So the labels, if we marked something LTS by itself, it would install any random operator that had the LTS label. So we would have to basically encode all of the specifics of the operator versions into the label identifier to make sure we got the right one, which is not great.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that is, I think, true in the abstract, but not true in practice, because it's true that we don't have compound constraints at the moment. So you can't say package with this version range and this label both have to be there. But what the resolver does is it tries to reduce the number of packages that are picked to satisfy resolution. So what should happen is if it picks one operator with an LTS label, one operator that satisfies the package version, but it finds another solution that has both the package version and the LTS solution, that's one operator versus two operators. So it picks the one with one operator.
Oh, so basically just I don't know, improves its satisfaction because it's got more
Right.
weight. Oh, interesting. I haven't tried that.
That's how it should be working.
Okay. All right. So okay. So if the
that
label
said,
piece didn't exist yet,
yeah, right.
it seems like this is kind of my only option other than doing the other things. Like I said, restricting a catalog to only show things that are available.
Yeah, I think prior to the new resolver work, it would make sense to either have channels that are specific for LTS that has an issue with dependencies that picks default channels. So you might want your LTS to be the default channel. And then another option would be to just have separate catalogs that have your LTS content in them.
Yeah, or else I'd have to have different APIs and different operator names
Right.
specifically for LTS. Not ideal.
Right.
Okay, so that kind of goes into my next item is, all right, so as I was kind of saying, I found some kind of nasty, interesting bugs in this regard. And so like, for example, if I installed 4.2, see what was the deal here. If I installed 4.1, I can't remember. If I upgraded one operator, then it allowed me to oh yeah, I think it was, I'm not gonna go into the details. I can't remember what it was exactly. But if I wanted to create some unit tests or some end-to-end tests in the operator or inside OLM, inside the Go framework, I'm trying to see if I would like to submit PRs with the test to simplify the experience and to make sure that, we preserve, the capabilities like we talked about in the beginning of the call. So for these kinds of things where I'm trying to actually do end-to-end, like subscription evolution and operator dependency resolution, all that stuff, are the end-to-end tests, the E2E tests, are those the right place to extend?
In the OLM or operator registry repos?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm just asking some advice from a developer perspective. If I wanted to start playing with these, I can't get them to run because I'm having problems understanding how the Docker run containers and stuff work. I'm having problems connecting my registry, which is probably a noob problem. But a lot of the details I've seen as far as how the graphs and stuff are traversed are all inside the resolver tests, which are kind of in the SAT solver area, which are kind of deeper than I think I'd want to write tests for.
There are some layers here. So the SAT solver tests are probably lower than you need to get to. Above that, there's the resolver, and the resolver is probably where the issues you're seeing can have tests. And then above that, there's the step resolver, which sort of translates from the resolver results out to individual install plan steps that we write out. So I imagine that these issues would be good unit tests for the resolver, not the SAT solver. And that's in the operator resolver package. It sounds like you've already found that.
Yeah, I found it. I just don't know what to do with it yet. So, but that's,
Yeah,
yeah, so
so
that's just a go test, right? So it doesn't need anything. I don't think I even need kube running for that, right?
yeah, you don't need anything special for that. If there is a particular case, you can write an indent test for that. That's in the top level test package. And you can do whatever you need to there, deploy catalogs and subscriptions to replicate a particular case. But we try and keep fewer of those and try and catch more things with the unit tests if possible.
Okay, I will continue down that line. So then the last thing is really about how, so I'm looking at the developer markdown file inside the operator lifecycle manager project. And it kind of gave me some heads up on, how I can do the make test and make I think it's make E2E local. So I thought I knew Bash, but there's some scripts in there which I don't understand. I got to go do a bunch of research and figure out how this, it looks like it's using kind for some stuff. It's using Docker for other things. I'm trying to understand, is there some documentation that talks about this and how the test framework actually runs? I'm a kube user from the user perspective. I'm not much of a kube developer, so I don't have the internal workings on how some of this magic works. So I'm wondering how I can figure this out quickly so I can start writing some tests.
Oh, yeah. Do we not have a contributors guide on how to run our E2E portfolio?
Well, there's a developer markdown file. There's a contributing markdown, which basically just tells you how to report bugs, what the contributor flow is. There's a development markdown, which tells you how to build it, right? And it tells you to use an old version of kube and things like that. But there's nothing really specific about the architecture and how the test framework actually works. So I'm trying to, I have to kind of reverse engineer it.
So
yeah, if you're trying to run the OLM E2E test, the easiest thing that I always do is I just spin up Minikube and then, I just deploy OLM and then I just copy the E2E test command. We could probably check that and make sure it still works or that the contributing guide is still clear. Evan, did you have something you wanted to say?
yeah, I figured I'm not sure if we have docs in it, but we can just talk about it now and then it'll at least be recorded and then we can hopefully go back and
I guess if nobody else has any other agenda items you wanted to cover, since it's the Chris show anyway.
I'm not hearing anything else, so.
Oh, which repo do you want to see us run E2E tests on, by the way, just so we...
I'm assuming it's the operator lifecycle manager repo.
Oh, sure. Okay. Evan, I could just screen share really quick, spin up a cluster, and then run the E2E suite and like scope it down to a single test.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome.
And I think the high level here is just that it's pretty much what Alex said. We have some scripts to help, but it's basically we spin up Kubernetes locally, one way or the other, Minikube kind, or you can sort of opt out of all of that, and if you have it running in a VM somewhere or something like that. And then the test suite itself is just a normal Go test, but it's a Go test that gets fed kube credentials to talk to the Minikube cluster that you spin up.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody can see my main screen right now. Can you see my terminal?
Yep, this looks familiar.
Cool. So I am just spinning up Minikube. I might do this differently than other people on my team, and they may rely more on the scripts, but I occasionally run into issues, so I just do it this way. If anybody has a better practice, just please feel free to speak out at the end, but I'll spin up Minikube right here.
And by the way, does this work on Mac, or are you guys doing this on Linux?
I've only used Linux, but I know Evan develops on a
Yes, it
Mac.
will work on Mac. So just saying here why this thing's still running. You don't need to spin up Minikube manually. The script itself will do that for you. I think Chris, you mentioned Mac E2E local, E2E dash local, I think.
Right,
That
yep.
will spin up Minikube cluster locally for you and run the entire end-to-end test suite from in OLM repo. So that's one stop command that will do everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that, and I think it could just be because I'm at home connecting to a VPN and stuff, but it can't connect to like the registry, the Docker registry from within the container that gets started inside the build command. Have you guys run into that before?
I'm
That
not
one is
sure.
new.
I never run into an issue with that.
Yeah, when
And
I start Minikube, it warns that you might need a proxy configured or something like that, which seems odd. Anyway, it must be a me problem.
I usually not in VPN, so I don't know what it feels like to be in VPN, to be honest.
Well,
But I
yeah,
wouldn't expect so. Most of the stuff we have is public repo. That should be able for you should be able to pull in anytime you want. There's no restriction on that.
Yeah, and if you're having troubles, I'm just going to show you really quickly where we are. So like if you just go into the OLM repository and you open the scripts directory and click E2E local, we actually have, you know, the go command that we run at the end right there. And I just usually change the OLM namespace to OLM and this dash namespace thing to operators. And then if you have a specific test that you want to run, you go to the test. So I'll just, we'll click the E2E test. We'll say I want to run a specific webhook test, and we'll say, here's a fun one. We'll just say like we want to do this one. This is using Ginkgo, and you can like do FIT, and that will just make it so that when you run the E2E script, it doesn't run like a couple hundred E2E tests. It will just run the one you're actually trying to debug and make sure it works. And then if you copy that command that we had just, sorry. Okay, that's one. Copy the command that we just made. And we run it. This will just run that one individual test, and then you can make sure that still works. So this little command that I had came from the run E2E local.sh that is located in the scripts directory. And I just put an F inside one of the Ginkgo it statement functions, and you can see we ran that single test.
There's another one that I think is pretty useful. This is almost a secret but there's an alternative make file in the repo called x.mk. So if you do actually let's put the command in the chat. So you do make, but you pass in the x.mk file and run EDE local there. It does a whole lot more for you automatically, and it's usually faster. It will spin up kind for you, a kind cluster, install OLM for you in the kind cluster, and it will then run a specific test, and you can pass a specific test name to it up front with the test flag.
Oh, all right.
Does that still work with the Ginkgo changes?
Yep, everything. It pretty much does all the same stuff. So I know, I guess you didn't go over this, but there's the EDE local in the main make file, which spins up Minikube if it's not already up, and installs OLM if it's not already installed, and all that does. But it's a bunch of bash scripts that does it. The difference with the x.mk is that there's a whole test provisioning framework that does all of that via Go, and you can, it's worth taking a look at some point. I think it vendors Helm and templates everything for you based on what the current configuration is and everything like that. So I don't know, I tend to have better luck with that one.
Yeah. And I think the fact that Chris had issues just even running our E2E suite, we may want to revisit our existing documentation to make sure that we onboard people for that process effectively.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of magic in there, and I can't quite figure out what's going on. Like
Yeah.
what's actually running in a Docker container versus inside Minikube, or it's kind of hard to reverse engineer all of it because there's some bash magic going on there, which I'm not familiar with. So
Yeah. Well, hopefully, now that, you have the x.mk file, and then you have like the actual location of the one Go command that you need to run if you want to just run the test suite. Hopefully that will
Yep.
unblock you a bit.
yeah, I think this will be really helpful. I just needed a kickstart.
There's, at least in the current iteration, there's no testing code that actually runs in the cluster. So the tests themselves are always running locally wherever you're running. And then they just reach out to a cluster with credentials.
Oh, that's good to know. All right. So what is the difference between, so what do the end-to-end tests do exactly?
They rely on a cluster, and the unit tests
Are they actually running unit tests against a cluster, or are those kind of like sniff tests?
They're, like a combination of mocks and JUnit tests, or I guess it's not JUnit tests, but yeah.
Because yeah, so one of the things is, I kind of want to simulate, real system verification test, right? So I'm actually creating subscriptions and really I want to exercise whatever the magic paths are that OLM uses to interrogate the catalog and the bundles, right? Because I'm worried if I'm doing it inside the resolver, it's too deep and I'm going to be missing some other decisions that might be made later on.
Yeah, OLM E2E, the OLM repo with the E2E test is definitely where you want to put those tests, because it relies on an actual cluster running with the OLM installed in that cluster, and then it will actually, you can there are multiple ways. You could either like make a config map catalog source, or you can use an actual catalog source image that you make available on a hosted repository. So you could get that full E2E test where you're actually installing an index image, and then you're creating a subscription, installing the operator in the index image, and make sure that OLM successfully installs the operator, and then you can do whatever else you want from there. You could make CRs for that operator and make weird stuff happen. You could.
So do you have enough framework there where you can programmatically design CSVs and operators and all that sort of thing on the fly and then persist them into the inside kube?
Yes. So the easiest way to do, you'd have to build the operators yourself, like the operator image that you're testing.
Right. Yep.
But you can absolutely, without even creating an index image and stuff, like reference that operator in.
Do you have a pattern of one I could use to start with, kind of like and cut and paste it into something new? Do you recommend like one test that would kind of do what I'm looking for?
Yeah. So Chris, I'm gonna say again that try not to confuse people, but the end-to-end test case it literally just mimics the behavior of how the user actually install an operator on the cluster of OM. So it's just similar to how you having a catalog source, and you just OC apply, kube apply, catalog source YAML, and then subscription and so on. So it's behave exactly like that. So it's not some magic beans that you try to imagine. That's not the case. So most of the test case on end-to-end, you will see there that unless they're testing something really specific, it's just similar to create a catalog source, create a subscription, and waiting for it to get resolved into installing a CSV with using the install plan, and then CID and stuff like that. And of course, any further testing, you can create some CR, something fancy, or you do some modification
Yeah.
of the CSV,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Yep, that's
So,
probably where I want to do it, because that's where the real customer visible use cases are.
yeah, so most of the test case you see in the test is actually going to behave similar like that. And then, obviously the first setup will be what I just said. And then further on, we can do some customization stuff on top of that. But for
Yeah.
the most part, So you basically just pick one of the test case and you pretty much see the similar parent that I just described. So you just basically pick one. So I don't think any of them, I mean, unless you're really lucky, pick the one that's a bit strange. But if you want, I can refer you to some of the things, some of the test case I think would be the best example if you want. And I'll post that on the Slack if that's helping.
Perfect.
Yeah, we actually even, like, and you can do anything you want in the E2E for the most part. Like we even have a test now where, you know, we built a operator that has a bunch of different types of webhooks like mission validation and conversion. And then we made that available on this Quay repo and we install it using OLM. And then we were able to validate that we successfully installed those webhooks and they were working as expected. And then we were able to use the dynamic client to actually request different versions of the CR and then parse it without even importing any of the, you know, the CR types from like some other repo for OLM testing. So there's it's a very flexible E2E framework.
So, all right. So coming from I'm a Java guy, so that's my history. I'm used to writing code that's self-documenting, but it has lots of comments in it. So this is why I'm having a problem. There's no comments in any code, and so that's why I'm having a tough time. And probably because I'm not a Go guy, and probably need to understand Go to be able to reverse engineer this more effectively. Is that kind of what is that my problem? Is that I'm just not a Go guy?
I don't think that's the case. Of course, in the test case, they're most likely having some top level comment to explain what's the test doing. But you know, after that, it may not be a lot of comments because it's most likely just like step by step running, if you know what I mean, like create this, create that, create this, create that, and checking for this, checking for that. So it's rather difficult to basically comment every single step, and it's become like comment more than actually the coding itself, unfortunately. Yeah, but I think the problem here is that you just need to look at one test, and I think I will do that for you. I pick up some test case that are actually easy for you to understand, and you just need to kind of look through that test and understand code line by line, and eventually I think you will get the concept of how things work in the test, and then from there you can expand your test to be something more complex when you feel more comfortable with it.
Right.
It's just you know, it's just like the test file, like I think for example the end-to-end install plan test is a massive file with like, I don't know, I'm not saying a million, but 20, 15 different test case there. This can be overwhelming at first to look at because you don't know where things started, where things ending and stuff like that. So just need to focus on one single test.
No, I get that. I'm just looking for, you know, I'm used to seeing, just at least with my own company and stuff, we tend to have like a preamble at the beginning of a file. This is kind of generally what this is up to. And I'm kind of having to, it's not obvious on some of these what's going on. I mean, the names are good and everything. It's just, I just need the starting point. And so I think I'm dangerous now. I think I can probably figure out what I need to do.
Cool. Yeah, and I would definitely like that. If you want to install an actual index and stuff, I would just look in the webhook one because I know there's an example where we do that, and then you know you can just change like image names and like everything from there. So
yep, yeah, I see all that.
So I know we're out of time. I don't think we have a great process for encoding and persisting new tests that require external images. So I don't think what we want is, right now we have a really, I would say, poor practice in the tests where we just hard code some external images that we also know we're managing. If we have a lot of contributions that link out to stuff on like random images on Docker Hub or Quay, then that's going to be a maintenance burden. So we are working on something that will let us build and push images as part of the end-to-end tests, but I don't think it's quite ready yet. So that's not to say don't work on this. That's just to say like we might want to figure out a way to, you know, if you're building an image for a test, we might want to put that in, you know, in the repo itself, like the source for it with the Docker file or something along those lines.
Right. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
because for all my OLM testing, we just wrote a real simple operator that just does basic stuff so it doesn't get in the way, right? So we're not testing the conversion webhooks right now. We're not testing, I'm just making sure the thing says it's ready, but I'm not doing anything fancy in it. I'm just mostly testing the lifecycle management parts of it, not the operator activity. So.
Right. Yeah. So the issue is that at least right now, we don't have a way to verify what goes into images that are built and included in the tests.
Yep.
So that would be, we don't have a good contribution workflow for that at the moment.
Okay. I appreciate all your time. I know we're over time here. It was very, very good for me.
Great. Awesome. Well, everybody, I'm happy we all met up and had these discussions. Remember that next week we'll be having the feature development meeting where we triage what we're working on in the future, and that'll be the inaugural one. So I'm very excited for it. And I will also be working on just getting a feedback form going for this working group so we can identify what people think is going well and then what they think is not going well in terms of this specific meeting, not so much OLM, because you guys are very vocal about what we need to improve there, which is good. So expect that in the next meeting. Thank you.